The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Sonic Web Studios specializes in custom web design, app development, social networking, search engine optimization, domain registration, email marketing, online stores, and more. Since our birth, we have been designing and developing immaculate websites and providing web solutions which are a cut above the rest. As a leading web designing enterprise, we have a team of extremely talented web designers who are well-focused and have the experience of working on multiple web developing platforms such as PHP, Magento, Custom WordPress, and more. Sonic Web Studios has been helping businesses of all kinds, whether big, small, established, or startup, impress their audiences with exemplary web solutions. We don't just create beautiful and functional websites. We give you a complete online solution with the main goal of enhancing your yearly revenues. We aim to give your business the online exposure and brand acknowledgement that will help you in achieving increased conversions leading to profitable sales. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
It's now time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Mike brings you great guests and interesting people from all across the globe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another great episode of the Mike Wagner Show.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with a wonderful musician, teacher, writer, and author of a new book, The Perpetual Beginner, A Musician's Path to Lifelong Learning. And he's considered the guitar guru of Music Row. Graduated in 1993 from the Manhattan School of Music in New York City, moved to Nashville in 2005. He also taught at Tennessee State, played in New York and Woodstock and more. Opened for such great acts like George Thorogood, Steve Miller, Martina McBride, 38 Special, and a lot more. And he can teach you how to play great guitar as well, too. So live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios in Music City, ladies and gentlemen, musician, teacher, and writer, and guitarist, Dave Isaacs. Dave, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Well, it's great to have you on board, too. So you're a musician, teacher, writer, and guitarist. You have a new book called The Perpetual Beginner, A Musician's Path to Lifelong Learning, and you're considered the guitar guru of Music Row. You open for George Thorogood, Steve Miller, Martina McBride, and a lot more. And before we get to all that, along with some teaching experience in Tennessee State, tell us how you first got started.
I first got started at 14, and now my mother has a clearer picture of this than I do because she says that it was my idea to play the guitar. My recollection is that she suggested it, but I do know the conversation was, what are you doing with yourself this summer? Oh, I don't know. Do you want to go to camp? No. Well, what do you want to do with yourself? She says, I said, I want to play guitar. I remember her saying, why don't you play guitar? Whichever it was, I'll give Mom credit either way.
Well, guitar either way, that's what you have something in common. Maybe it was just subtle.
Maybe so. Yeah, but that was about the time, I guess I discovered the radio a couple of years before that. And, at that age, music starts to become so important, and it became an obsession for me. So it was the right thing, whoever's idea it was.
Uh-huh. And also after taking up guitar at 14 as well, too, you moved on to some other things. And you know what happened after you're 14? And let's just go from there.
Well, after, I guess, a year or so, I started feeling like I actually was okay at this, or people were impressed that I hadn't been playing all that long. So that was good. You start getting that positive feedback. But I really, like I said, I'd fallen in love with music, and the guitar was something I just immersed myself in. And it was less than 2 years later that I had decided this is what I wanted to do with myself. And I did want to go to school. My parents expected me to get an education of some kind, and they said, okay, you can go to music school. We'll go with this. And I ended up completing 2 degrees, a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in classical guitar performance, which was a great experience to have done that. That's not where my career ended up going, but it certainly set me on a different kind of a trajectory, which is one of the things that I talk about in the book, that you have your path through whatever your career is, but for a lot of musicians, it tends to be you have an area you gravitate to and you build from there. Whereas I've gone from one to another and to another over here, and I used to feel like it was confusing. And I no longer do, because now, as one friend of mine pointed out, it's not that you have to pick a genre. Your thing is that you don't have a genre, but you teach about music as a whole. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where the whole path has led.
It sounds like you pretty much had taught all kinds of guitar. And what would you say is the easiest, and what was your favorite? And what would you say was a little more challenging for you? What type of guitar?
Wow. Okay. Well, obviously when people want to do things that are technically very demanding, if something is going to challenge me, then that's the most challenging thing to teach somebody, because I've got to absorb it and go through all of that myself. Of course, that's a great challenge in itself. And, you know, one thing, I used to feel self-conscious about that stuff, because you feel like I'm supposed to be the expert. So whatever you come in here asking me about, I should be able to just say, here it is, right? But the more I learned about being a teacher, the more I recognized that what somebody needs most of all is to be able to watch my process. How am I learning this? So it was no longer intimidating, because it was more like, okay, you and I are going to do this together. And then that really becomes a lot of fun. But as far as the most difficult teaching to do, honestly, is with young children, because you have to find the right ways to connect with them. And when I first started teaching, I was just giving music lessons in the neighborhood, and I had really no clue. Over time, you get to be better and better about it.
Mm-hmm. I was referring to things like the classical guitar, the 12-string, and
okay, sure.
So you know what? We're also glad you gave it from that aspect. I was thinking more like the classical guitar, the 12-string, and also Spanish guitar, and just every guitar in the book as well. That's what I was referring to.
Well, let me say this though. I think that this will ruffle some feathers, but this is my opinion, as I have been putting out there for a long time, and the book repeats this over and over again, that I don't think it's any harder to do one thing than another if you're doing it at an extremely high level. Some things are technically a lot more demanding. I mean, I think classical guitar is possibly the most demanding style, if you're going to say within a genre, just because of the level of command you need over the instrument, and you have absolutely nothing to hide behind. But at the same time, there are great bluegrass guitarists who I think are some of the best pickers in the world. Great jazz guitarists, some of the best players in the world. Is someone that plays a simpler style like the blues or folk music. Maybe that person is not as accomplished as a well-rounded guitarist as far as the things that they can do. So we can say, well, folk music is easier than jazz, except for the fact that, and I wrote a whole chapter in the book about this, that I remember going to a folk music retreat when I was 20 or 21, and I'm thinking I'm a hot shot because, I'm studying classical guitar, I can rip on the electric guitar, this is all easy 3-chord stuff, and I grew up on folk music, I love it, but I was sort of like, yeah, we're good here. And I start jamming with these people, and they are kicking my butt. Because not that I couldn't physically play, what they were playing, but the ease, the command, the solidity, there's just this absolute confidence that just rolls out of somebody when they so embody the music, when they play it that well. And I guess, it's not so much a question of, is it harder to play this style than that style? I mean, yeah, is it physically harder to hold down notes on a 12 string than a 6 string? Usually. But, is it harder to play bluegrass than it is to strum a simple country song? Is it harder to play bebop than it is to play the blues? Well, physically maybe, but as far as to make it do what it's supposed to do, which is make somebody listening go, whoa, what was that? It's here, but it's here connected to here. It's the ability to translate something powerful through the fingers. The problem with the guitar, at least the way I think a lot of people learn it nowadays, and this is going to get into one of my, not to hijack your interview, because I do this. I go off on tangents, ask any of my college students.
No, you're good. You're good. We love to hear what you got. You're good.
Guitar is so finger oriented. And so nowadays, with everything on the internet being watch a video, read a tab, and everybody is like this, fingers, fingers, fingers. And it becomes just disembodied hands out here. There's no human being back behind it, And that's not a put down on any particular style of music, but it was just, it was so driven home to me in that experience with the folk musicians that I thought that I was a sophisticated musician, and so I'd be able to keep up easily. And it wasn't that at all. I was not fluent in the language, and so it didn't matter how sophisticated my abilities were. If I was too stupid to know I had to learn the language and speak with the right accent to fit in, then it didn't matter all the other stuff I knew how to do.
And that's very interesting too, that how you do it with the traditional way, your method, and also comparing to YouTube as well. And you also talk about some of the great guitarists as well. Who are some of your favorite guitarists growing up?
Oh God, so many. So when I was starting out, my first guitar teacher gave me a cassette. This is 1980, maybe 81, with Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced on one side, and Eric Clapton, Slow Hand on the other, and some assorted blues filler. So there was some Mike Bloomfield, there was a couple of Steve Stills tracks, and that kind of set the blueprint for the sound. And this is around when I discovered Led Zeppelin. So Jimmy Page became an idol. Eric Clapton was an idol. Then you start discovering all these other great musicians of all kinds. And the people that I think, when I say, who have I stolen the most from over the years? It's those guys. It's Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. It's Eric Clapton. It's Mark Knopfler. Absolutely. It's Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. Pat Metheny, the great jazz guitarist. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix. So many. And as time goes on, you just keep hearing more and more people. But those are the names that when I just kind of clear my mind and just play, or just pick up the guitar and do something, and just kind of let my hands go, and this comes. You know where I'm coming from when that's the first thing that comes out.
Mm-hmm. And that's amazing as well, too. And we'll talk about your book as well, too. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. Powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Check the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with musician, teacher, writer, guitarist Dave Isaac, the guitar guru of Music Row, here in the Mike Wagner Show with his new book, The Perpetual Beginner, A Music's Path to Lifelong Learning. And tell us more about the book and what inspired you to write it.
The book is something that I've wanted to do for many years at this point. I mean, I love books. I grew up reading a lot of books. Like when I was much younger, I thought I wanted to be a writer. But what really made me want to do this was over the course of the last 15 years, let's say since I've been in Nashville, and I've begun to specialize more in the kind of person that I work with. Nashville, full of musicians, but also full of songwriters. And most people who write songs really started playing the guitar specifically so they could write songs. If, say, one considers oneself a songwriter first, if the thing you're driven to do is write songs. So the guitar is a vehicle. And it's not that hard to just get a basic vocabulary together, and then once you've got a handful of chords, you can write songs. So then some people find 10 years, 20 years down the line, I've been playing the guitar for 20 years. I'm still playing it like I've been playing it for 6 months because I never went past that first set of things I needed. I was seeing that over and over again. But I'm also finding in working, and this is primarily with adults these days that I teach. The kids that I teach are generally more serious, trying to really do something and build careers in the industry. But a lot of people who'd played when they were younger, coming back to it, I hate to say later in life, but you know what I mean, as a mature person, and finding that they just can't put the pieces together. So the title of the book is something that came from all these people. They'll say, well, I'm still a beginner, even though I've been playing for 20 years. Long-term beginner. Then that leads to perpetual beginner. And what does that mean? And so what the book is really intended to do is to say, there are a handful of things that really will connect the dots for those people, the people that feel like they have this basic vocabulary that never grew, even though if you've been writing music for 10 or 20 years, you've got a lot going on up here. It just isn't getting to the hands. And then the people that may have taken lessons and really even learned to play. I had a lesson today earlier with a guy who said, you know, all my friends who play guitar, except for one that plays in the band, none of them can play a whole song. I said, well, that's why. Because they never had a reason to. So they're just simple insights like get with other people and play whole songs. That it doesn't mean someone has to go and spend a year or 10 years in the woodshed to be able to play better, and with that kind of confidence and ease that I was seeing from those folk musicians. It starts with mindset. And so a lot of these lessons were things that came to me because I think I was really lucky, coming up to be exposed to a lot of great musicians in a lot of different areas, in the classical world, in the rock world, in the folk world, in the jazz world. And people doing different kinds of things, living different kinds of lives, but all having a life in music, and, you know, showing me how much of it was about what you think. I'd learned how to practice, you know how to use your hands to do things, but as far as how do you make connections, how do you solve problems? And so writing the book is partly to put these ideas in one place so that I can point someone to, here's my manifesto, basically. You know, I've been kidding around, joking that I've been looking for a unified field theory of music my whole career. But in some ways, there kind of is, at least from the learning perspective, which is just this, that music is concrete. It has elements you can identify and break down and categorize, and that's what you do when you study music theory. And so just like any other field, if I have to learn how to do something, I have to learn what the materials are and the process for working with them. And if I can do that, then I can accomplish this task. But with music, we all think either you were gifted with that ability or you weren't. And even people who study, if they don't think they're gifted, in the back of their minds, they're thinking, well, you know, I'm not really, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, well, you know, I don't have any skill. I just do it because, or I don't have any talent. I'm not going to be very good. I just want to do it anyway. The do it anyway part is great, but then I'm not going to be very good. What was the point of that? So it's aimed at those people. You know, it's, yes, you can. I don't care whether you think you have talent or not. And here's how. Just look at it as something you're going to learn this piece, then this bit, then this bit. After a while, you've worked the jigsaw puzzle and you see the big picture. You just got to keep going.
It almost sounds like it's not your typical, guitar book. You learn the chords,
not at all.
And everything like that. It's more about, going beyond that. It's all going about intuition, philosophy, and connecting, and just about everything possible. And I'd say in a nutshell, it's almost like a lifelong experience you just kind of go through as, I'm trying to think who the guy was involving Zen. I think it's Phil Jackson, and maybe like somewhat in a Phil Jackson way, just bringing it all together, not just playing, but having it help you play better.
Yeah.
I think I got that.
Well, those are the people that really connected with me, is whether they were actually playing up the sort of Zen, or the entering the dojo, or, lots of people use this kind of language. But the teachers that really embodied that, of starting with your mind and then letting that lead how you do everything else, those are the people who spoke to me the most. And yeah, I read a lot of those books, and they made a big difference. I think that's a real thing. That, it's because think of it, so much of it is just about clarity, seeing things as they are instead of as what you want them to be. So if you're trying to learn how to do something better, but you can't see it as it is, all you can see is what you want it to be and know that it isn't, you're going to give up because you're frustrated. Or if you think it's better than it is, you're certainly not going to get any better because you don't know how to actually improve anything. Right. It's just that crystal clarity.
Mm-hmm. And that's very important, too. Maybe you can just, in a little bit, just demonstrate a bit or two with the guitar on from your book as well, too. And while you're getting that, let's remind everybody, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Take The Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to The Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow The Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with musician, teacher, writer, and guitarist guru Dave Isaac here on The Mike Wagner Show. He's been considered guitar guru of Music Row. And, of course, he's been in Nashville since 2005 as well, too. And I forgot to ask you about that. Tell us about your move coming to Nashville before you start playing for us.
Oh, wow. Well, Nashville was the only place that made sense to land. My wife and I knew that we wanted to leave New York, which is where we had both grown up, and go to another part of the country. I had been going to Nashville already to meet musicians and network and to play and just to get a sense of what was going on there. I actually didn't grow up on country music. I grew up more with folk music and classic rock, I suppose. But I heard a lot of what would have been what I suppose I now would consider country. I just didn't think of it that way necessarily. I didn't really become familiar with modern country until the 90s or so, when all this stuff that suddenly sounded like the Eagles was country music, and it was closer to the sort of country flavored rock of the 70s. So that started to speak to me. And honestly, the Grateful Dead introduced me to a lot of traditional country, to Marty Robbins and to Merle Haggard and people like that. So I kind of went backwards from there, in learning about country music. But Nashville is just a music center now. And since I've been here over the last 15 years, a lot has expanded. It's certainly not just about country music anymore. But at the time, it just felt like a great place to be a musician because there's so much talent around you, which means there's a lot of competition, but there's also this really fertile, it's all these great people to work with, and to create something with. And that's also my favorite thing about playing music, is working off of other good players. And so that's just been a joy. And it also really allowed me to kind of find myself as a teacher, because I had the opportunity to work with songwriters, with performers, with people that are creative and want to use their instrument for a specific thing to get in front of people and make music. And I'm not saying that's better than anything else, but it sort of directed things in a good way.
Right. And who are some of your favorite folk singers growing up?
Oh, God. Well, so when I was growing up, I think Doc Watson was my favorite. My folks were definitely both fans of his, and so I grew up on his records. My mom listened to Jean Ritchie a lot because she's from Eastern Kentucky, and so that music reminded her of home. And so I grew up on a lot of that. And Pete Seeger was a big mainstay in the house. And when I met him, that was exciting. We used to go to the Clearwater Revival Folk Festival that he founded up in New York. Still goes on, actually. I used to go to that every year. So those were the kind of big ones in our house, as far as like folk music.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm ready to get a Pete Seeger record after we get done here. He also opened for George Thorogood, Steve Miller, Tina McBride, 38 Special, more. And tell us more about those and who are the best. Who would you say was your favorite that you opened for?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, there were a lot of those. I had, when we lived in New York, and this is, as I said, I started to discover country music in the 90s. And when I started writing songs, to the ears of the people around me, they were saying, oh, that sounds country. And so I started paying more attention to country music and discovered I liked a lot of it. And when I started a band and started playing around town, that was the music we learned to fill out the set. So we were playing a lot of contemporary country. A band called Jackalope Junction that was regionally solidly successful. We worked all the time. We had a good following. And so you would get plugged in to the larger venues that bring in somebody local to open the shows. Or sometimes you were closing the show if you were at more of a venue club kind of situation. Maybe the headliner was at 8 and you were on at 11 or whatever. But those were actually some of my favorites because you'd be in these little intimate venues. And we played a show one time with the Flatlanders, who are 3 great Texas songwriters. They did an album called More a Legend Than a Band, which tells you something about the Flatlanders. But Butch Hancock, Joe Ailey, and Jimmy Dale Gilmore are all legendary in Texas. And the 3 of them working together, just, tremendous songwriters in that Texas tradition and good musicians. And it was so great to sit in this little venue and watch them and then get up on the stage afterwards. All the big shows, the Martina McBride, the George Thorogood, all of that was fantastic. That was cool. It was fun to do all of those. But you were still far enough, it wasn't like we were on the tour, right? You were on the, one of the side stages at the show. So you were there and you put it in your press kit. I'm not going to lie. You work with what you've got.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, too. And of course, it's amazing we had all this talent to work with and everything. And we're on the book called The Perpetual Beginner, A Musician's Path to Lifelong Learning with musician Dave Isaacs on the Mike Wagner Show. And Dave, you can just, go into a couple of things in the book and demonstrate, about the Perpetual Beginner, like with, some of the lessons and maybe just demonstrate a couple on the guitar for us.
Sure. Well, so I'll tell you this. One of the things that struck me after a couple of years in Nashville was that if I was going to establish myself in a place where there was this much competition, I had to be offering something that other people weren't. And you need to have a reason to come to me instead of to one of the 10,000 other guys you could go to teach you how to play a C chord. But the thing that I came to realize is that they were teaching put your fingers here. Whereas, what I like to do, and certainly a guitar lesson is going to involve put your fingers here, but I tell people in the beginning, we got to make friends with it. Just get comfortable with it. Like you're sitting there with it. Does it feel good? Or do you feel like you're wrapped around this box and you got to contort yourself, crawl into the hole, and all of this never works well. So, how does it feel? Well, okay, let's put it on a strap. Yeah, that feels pretty good. Okay, can you tap your foot? Yeah. Can you tap your hand? All right, let's get a groove going, right? That feels good. Now swing your arm. And someone goes like this. And you go, well, that didn't feel good, did it? No, it didn't. Okay, well, relax. Okay, now swing your arm. Oh, wow, that sounded better. And just getting people to tune in. What did that feel like? Instead of, here, put your hand here, now put your arm here, now try to push through that. And I'm not saying that that's how everyone else in the world teaches. Of course not. But enough people do, or at least someone will come in and say, oh, I took lessons for 5 years, and they're still playing like this. And granted, maybe their teacher just tried and could never really help them get there. Maybe they're terrible listeners. I don't know. But I just see people coming in with more experience than what they're showing me should reflect. And I think so much of it comes from just, well, did you get comfortable first? And then the people who are sort of naturally gifted, they're just immediately comfortable. It's, okay, that feels good. Whereas if, if your impulse is to do that, you're going to struggle and struggle. And if you want it bad enough, you'll get there. But the lessons in the book are like that. There are definitely things I walk you through. Like I might talk about pressure and how most people just push, and fight the guitar. And no, it's just be this thing that's, you've been watching people all these years go, so it looks like it's supposed to be a lot of work, which, okay, I move around like that too on stage because that's, that feels good to me. But to just recognize, gee, this is how little effort it takes to put two fingers next to each other and just swing your arm. And there's nothing foreign or weird about that. I mean, my hands are pretty much the same way they would be if I were just holding them out in front of me, right? It's just this becomes that. And I'm not going to say that as a teacher, I've never seen people that really had a harder climb, more of an uphill climb than others. But at the same time, I have yet to see someone that when you introduce those ideas doesn't immediately see the benefit and feel a difference from that. And then the other thing is everyone's like, well, I have terrible timing, I have terrible rhythm. You go, well, can you tap your foot? Well, yeah, but I can't play guitar at the same time. Well, I don't care about that. Can you tap your foot? Well, yeah. Can you nod your head? Yeah. Can you breathe? Yeah, I do that. Can you walk? Yeah, I can do that too. Well, then you understand rhythm. If you can walk, you understand rhythm. What you've got to work on is your coordination, because this is over here doing one thing, and your hand's just off on its own, doing its own thing. It had nothing to do with what your foot's doing. All you learn how to do is, okay, here's this. My body knows what even feels like, because everybody can do this. I have yet to find someone that can't, nod their head in time. So just, okay, break it down. Just count to 4. And if you got to really 1, 2, 3, 4, if that's what you got to do, that's what you do. Just to absorb it somehow. And I'm convinced that when we talk about people being talented, being gifted, having a predisposition for music, the things that they have, the gifts they were given is A, better ears or more tuned in ears, so that they can hear a sound and then hear that same sound or a similar sound coming from an instrument and realize that, ooh, my fingers like this made the sound like that doorbell, ding dong, or whatever it was. And making these intuitive connections. I heard this, and when I did this, that same thing happened. There's that, and then there's the ability to feel the rhythm more strongly, which I think was, certainly for me, in terms of if I was gifted, which I do believe I was, but it was not easy for me. I worked really hard to learn how to play the way I play. But I do know that I could pick out melodies as a kid, the piano, simple ones. But, my ears were attuned enough to that. I grew up in a musical household, too. And then the other thing was that it was just always comfortable for me to feel it. My body always wanted to move with the guitar, and which is one of the things that was challenging about the classical, because to just sit in this position for someone that wants to stomp their feet, maybe it wasn't the best thing for sort of me physically as far as who I am. But that was huge too, just to recognize that there's this physical aspect to playing an instrument, and we treat it like it's just the hands. Well, is this groove going to feel right if my feet aren't stomping? Now, do I have to move? No, but you feel it more if I do. There's just it's a sensation, it's not hit this here. It's what did that feel like? Like a punch in the gut. Well, then, okay, now we did something right. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's very different from the way a lot of people think about it, because it's not an intellectual exercise, but it's making intellectual... It's learning concrete facts and relationships, this intellectual element, but using it to explain this thing that's concrete. You felt that. You heard that.
And that's fantastic too. Although I don't have a guitar with me, I was feeling the rhythm as well too. I was doing the air guitar. I said it's making a lot of sense.
Good.
Yes, it does. That's right. And of course, what can we expect from you in 2020 and beyond?
Oh Lord. Well, no one knows what to expect next from 2020, but the plan, which obviously, along with everybody else's, has changed, was the book was published officially in October of last year, and I had hit the ground running with starting to book events, workshops. I do a lot of talking to music students at schools and neighborhood music schools and some colleges, universities, and so forth. And so I'd set up a lot of that, and basically I was planning sort of an ongoing book tour, and all those events, of course, got canceled earlier in the year. And so this is part of why I reached out to you, and what we're doing here is the ongoing virtual book tour. And, the thing that's really nice is that sales have really been solid because of the internet and because people are, we're home looking for books to read, I guess. But so to continue to do that and get the word out about this, because I don't want it to be, well, yeah, I put a book out and here's your blip on the radar and it goes away. I mean, I want this to have a lasting impact. But along with that, I've got 1,000 things in my head I'd like to write about. So I'm sort of collecting ideas in my head for what the next book might be. But before that happens, I've spent the last 6 months writing music, and I wrote a set of acoustic guitar pieces that I'm going to publish as sheet music and downloads and also video lessons, like as a whole package. But I'll also make an actual sheet music book, because that's something else I always wanted to do, like to be a composer, and here's your sheet music with just the way that my music looked, practicing from sheet music is, as simple as it is, or grandiose as it might seem. I want to have my sheet music with my name on it as the composer. But I wrote them as teaching pieces, as etudes, as exercises. So those are almost ready to go, and I'm going to be publishing those this year. And then I have an album to finish. I've written a bunch of songs, and I've been saying for 3 years, when I finish the book, I'll put out another album. So the book's finished. I need to put out another album.
And we're looking forward to it as well, too. Love to have you back. Just keep us up to date. Once again, musician, teacher, writer Dave Isaacs here on the Mike Wagner Show with the Perpetual Beginner, a musician's path to lifelong learning. And where can we find your book at?
Find my book anywhere you can find books. It is distributed worldwide. It is, of course, on Amazon, but your local bookstore can order it too. And you can find out more about it at my website, which is NashvilleGuitarGuru.com.
Okay. And who do you consider your biggest influence in your career, Dave?
Oh, God, in my career. Oh, God, there's so many. But I will say this. I will say that one of my guitar teachers in college, Ben Verdery, who's a phenomenal classical guitarist, but also one of the few that has spent his career blending what he does with other kinds of musicians. He's got a collaboration on YouTube with a rapper where he's playing Bach. I mean, it's really very cool. Very open-minded musician. So he taught me a lot about how to take something that has all of this structure and rules, but to still find a way to make it vital and to make it fit into the modern world. But he said to me, if you're committed as a musician, you're going to make a life for yourself. He said, I'm absolutely convinced of that. And I think that was one of the things that really gave me the confidence that I wasn't going out on a limb and I needed something to fall back on, because I knew I was studying and I knew I was learning. And, to look at him and say, here's a guy who's touring all over the world and here are the things he's learned how to do. And he's looking at me and saying, yeah, you can do this. It's going to look different than mine does, but you commit yourself to it and you will make a life in music. And that is absolutely what I've done. My wife pointed out to me one day, she said, you think about what you set out to do, you've done it.
And you've done an amazing job as well, too. What's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Pay attention.
Well said. I think many of us can use that. So that was fantastic. Once again, Dave Isaacs of the Perpetual Beginner, A Musician's Path to Lifelong Learning, the Mike Wagner Show. Dave, a big thanks for your time. You've been fantastic as the guitar guru of Music Grow. You've been great. Love to have you back on sometime soon. Keep us up to date. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
Everything is NashvilleGuitarGuru.com, and all my socials are also Nashville Guitar Guru, so on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and I'm constantly posting video lessons on YouTube. At this point, I'm trying to keep it to once a week, so there's steady content going up there, and there's 18,000 followers on there now. So that's going very well, and that is a good place to look for new content. Also, the website has a blog. Everything is linked to the book. As I said, you can find it on Amazon, or even just search The Perpetual Beginner and you'll find it. But it is distributed worldwide, and any local bookstore can order it as well.
That is fantastic. Once again, Dave, a very big thank you for your time. You've been fantastic. Looking forward to having you soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. We'll have you back on in 2020 and beyond. You've been great.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate you having me.
The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Sonic Web Studios specializes in custom web design, app development, social networking, search engine optimization, domain registration, email marketing, online stores, and more. Since our birth, we have been designing and developing immaculate websites and providing web solutions which are a cut above the rest. As a leading web designing enterprise, we have a team of extremely talented web designers who are well-focused and have the experience of working on multiple web developing platforms such as PHP, Magento, custom WordPress, and more. Sonic Web Studios has been helping businesses of all kinds, whether big, small, established, or startup, impress their audiences with exemplary web solutions. We don't just create beautiful and functional websites. We give you a complete online solution with the main goal of enhancing your yearly revenues. We aim to give your business the online exposure and brand acknowledgement that will help you in achieving increased conversions leading to profitable sales. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and themikewagnershow.com. Please support our program with your donations at themikewagnershow.com. Join us again next time for another great episode of The Mike Wagner Show.